Hey guys, welcome to Football in 90 Live. I'm your host, Coach Akeem Lambert, and I'll be joined by Coach Paul Hall. And I'm sure you guys want to hear on his experience and exposure. I'm excited. So let's see what the gaffer has to say about his development from player to a coach. Paul Hall will join us in just a few. Let's send Paul a request. So request was sent out, and I'm currently waiting on the gaffer to join us here at Football in 90. Coach, thank you for joining us here at Football in 90. It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here. Pleasure to be here. Thank you.
You know, Coach, I must say my members here at Football in 90, young individuals who want to, to go out there and explore what world football has to offer. So it is a great opportunity to have you on, so younger players can hear about your experience and exposure from a player to a coach.
Okay, no problems, man. No worries.
So how are you doing? How is the weather?
Yeah, well, the weather's good, actually. The weather's all right because I was in Jamaica, 3 weeks ago? And the weather is somewhat cooler in England. However, the weather's not been too it's been kind. It's been kind. The sun's shining, and so when I'm going out and coaching, as you can see, I've not long come back in from a coaching the young ones today. So it's been good. The weather's been great.
Well said, Coach. And Coach, the everyday life, and I'm sure you would have wanted to watch the game between Manchester United and Liverpool, but we leave that discussion for another time. But
Painful,
tell us. But tell us about Paul Hall. Tell us where the transition, the beginning phase of Paul Hall began here in Jamaica.
Well, let me start off with my career first, because I had a 22-year career in football. I started at 16 and I finished at 38, which was people get less in prison. They get less time in prison for doing something like that, but it was a long stretch. And while I was coaching, a lot of the Americans are like this. What they said was, study while you play, because I found myself, as a footballer, you only can do a certain amount of football in the day, and then you've got a lot of time. So I found myself being well paid, and I wanted to go to college, so I went to university to then go and study journalism, and I did various other things, learned Spanish and things like that. But I wanted to be able to coach and be employable after the game. So when I was going for jobs after I retired, people were saying, "Well, what you good at?" And I was like, "Well, I can play football," and nobody ever wanted to employ that type of person. So you have to have some kind of education behind you, or at least while you're studying, try to study as a mature student. So I went into coaching, did my level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4, level 5, all the way through while I was playing, and it's helped me, and it's helped me to become a better coach.
Coach, there are young coaches here in Jamaica who, have aspirations to go beyond those reaches that you would have experienced. What are some of the things that you would have faced, and some of the challenges, and how you were able to overcome those challenges?
Well, being a black coach is a massive challenge in England. It's a massive challenge in Europe. But I happen to be at one of the football clubs where it's the most diverse club I would say in world football. We've got Andrew Impey, Paul Furlong, Chris Ramsey, Les Ferdinand, Micah Hyde, all these guys, Adi Bankole, all these guys are at the top of our coaching tree, and we're all black men. So, we're probably third in the country at producing young players, and getting them to be top level players as well. We sold Ebere Eze to Crystal Palace. So, the challenges are up there as a black man. The barriers that you face are, people can just prejudge you just because you're a black man. So you've got that to fight. You've also got paying for your A licenses and your B licenses, you've got to think about, can I do that alongside a job? It is really, you've really got to focus on it and really dedicate yourself to it. And if you don't dedicate yourself to it, then it can be something that you just do and then forget. You've got to literally commit yourself to coaching. But the rewards in it are massive. And I would say for any coach, especially coaches in Jamaica, to try to improve yourself as much as possible. When I was around the national setup, I made every coach get an intern, which was something that I wanted interns to be around us, not to just win games, but it was just to make sure that those coaches are learning and taking stuff back to their clubs. We had somebody, a physio, we had a coach, we had a doctor. Everybody had an intern in the national setup, which that's what I want to do.
Coach, I'm listening to a man's experience, who, with discipline at the heart, of his sacrifices, you would have mentioned some core values that will lead ultimately, to become a well-rounded individual. And so lots of commendations to you, Coach, and your sacrifices, because, to coach youngsters, I am one who says the best teacher is experience, and it's good to learn from experience, and listening to your experience and exposure, it is quite fascinating to hear and learn from someone who has been there.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, like I say, it's not easy, because when you come out of football after such a long career, it then becomes difficult to know where to go. And even when you're a young coach just starting out your career, it's difficult to know where to go because the opportunities are so little. And everybody will have this thought in Jamaica at the moment of getting to the island and trying to go to America, to Europe, and everybody's dreams of that. But my dream probably is the opposite. My dream is to create a world-class fraternity of coaches in Jamaica, and I don't see why it can't happen. What it does do is it takes probably a world-leading coach to come in and just show best practice and have everybody trying to buy into that, and everybody just improving everybody else and challenging everybody else. Challenge is really key. A lot of coaches want everybody to pat them on the back and say, that was brilliant. But for me, I'd rather somebody come to me and say, why did you do that? Or, you could have done this, and I'll consider it. And it's something that you have to move towards and accept criticism as much as you accept praise.
Coach, I 100%, agree with you. It is what, this is a fact. So there, people need to understand the different characteristics that surround success. And, we just got to go out there and do what we have to do as individuals. So, Coach, you have been, meet different people, especially over there in England there, and then coming back to Jamaica, to do your part. What are some of the things, that the similarities are, some are things that are not similar?
Similarities are striking, Similarities are striking. I think what we need to do is I think that some of the things that we face, some of the barriers that we face, put it that way, is the grass. We need good grass to play on. I think every coach would love a green pitch to be able to play on. I mean, that's one of the differences. I mean, in England, I get like a snooker table or a tennis court. It's beautiful. And we can encourage the players to then keep the ball on the ground and play that nice, attractive football that we want to, and I accept nothing less in terms of playing football, and I will refuse to be associated with anything else, because I like to watch the game being played in a certain way. I feel that the coaches in Jamaica are hungry, very hungry, to want to do well. I like that about coaches in Jamaica, and they're open to learning. I think when they speak to somebody from a different environment, they're very open to learning. And I think where I'd like to see coaches stretch themselves a little bit more is to reflect often. the power of reflection. So what could I have done better? How did I do? It would be even better if I did this. That would be something that I would encourage coaches to do while they're here. My eyes have been open to coaches in Jamaica, and especially with the coaches that I've worked alongside, Coach Fuzzy and Aaron Gordon. These guys are good coaches, and it's my job to give them the confidence to be able to work with top class players. And I expect if Merrin and Coach Fuzzy Brown are good coaches, there's going to be many more in Jamaica, many more. They can't be the only two. So it's been good. There's a lot of similarities, but it's just opportunity, isn't it? I think if you were to give one of those coaches, a coach in Jamaica, the opportunity that we would get in England or in Europe, they would flourish. And I think we've just got to try to see if we can create that environment in Jamaica.
So, Coach, you're saying that based on your assessment of the coaches that you would have met in Jamaica and all the games that you'd have gone to and see their philosophy, your coaching methods, you believe that we're capable to go on the world stage to do wonderful things?
What I would say is in the way how it is now, I think that a lot of improvements need to be made, but I think we have the potential for sure. And there's coaches that want to play football, coaches that want to go out there and win. There's coaches who understand about development. I think what we need to do is we need to get players playing younger. Get in this country, get them playing younger so that they can get used to the movements, the principles that we ask them to do. But yeah, I think we could. Like I said, Belgium didn't start off being the best team in the world. They had they were way down the pecking order, and so were Wales. And there's many examples of where countries were in the wilderness, and had to look at themselves and start again. And really, they had the potential. And now Belgium, I don't know if Belgium are number one anymore, but they're definitely in the top three. And they started from nowhere. So if Belgium can do it, then Jamaica, with all the athletes and the resources that we've got just naturally as people, I don't see any reason why we can't emulate what the athletes have done, because they're super gold medalists all over the place with the athletes. And I don't see why we can't do it as footballers, because the resources are here. It's just us tapping into that resource and all agreeing to try to work together to get the best product.
Coach, you continue to mention things of value that will enable, coaches, and not just coaches alone, but, the general development of a human here to make a transition. And I accept your proposal, your commitment, that these are the aspects that will require the right character and discipline. But there has to be a certain level of transition from Jamaica, to get that exposure that you as coach would have gotten, and I think that's where you are heading in terms of the plans that and our characteristics as Jamaicans to make that transition, if I'm correct.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not going to happen overnight, but what I do see is I see improvements. I really do see improvements, and I know that Jamaica, without anything, could get to a World Cup, because we did it in '98 and we had nothing then. And the program has moved on. However, the world has moved on as well. And so we've got to catch up with the rest of the world on certain things. And hopefully we can all work together to do that. I mean, the Premier League is an example. They're working very hard to make a product, to make Jamaican football look attractive. They've got an app. You can see that they're trying really hard to make that look as good as it can be, and I think they've done a good job with it. So I feel it's here. It's just we've all got to work together to be able to, like you say, to transition out of where we are at the moment, and to all work together to pull. Because I'm sick of people playing for different countries like England who are Jamaican. Look at the last game we played against them. there were four Jamaicans, as well as Mariappa. Mariappa was one of them, but there was three that was on the Canadian team that were Jamaicans. So we do have the talent. It's just about can we get our coaches to be better, which then will enable our players to be better. And then once our players get better, I feel that we can get the infrastructure needs to be better to start off with, and all these things need to improve. But slowly but surely we can get there.
You know, Coach, I've had the opportunity to speak to quite a few of the top coaches here in Jamaica, as we may say. But one of the things that that came out of the discussion is that we must have a certain philosophy about ourselves. That system, that system to play from the youth system right through. And I know you'd have observed some of the Premier League games, especially see some young talents on display. What are some of the things that you would have recognized from watching those games?
Well, I've noticed a lot of the time the ball spends a lot of the time in the air, right? And you can tell the teams who come to the games to pass the ball. There are a few teams who want to get it down and play, and it's a difficult thing to try to get a team to play football. It's not the easiest thing in the world to coach. You've got to have a philosophy. You've got to have a game model. The people need to want to see it. And the players need to be able to be, I suppose, capable to be able to carry out your wishes. And what I see is some players at times trying to get the ball down and trying to play in the Premier League. The surfaces aren't great. And I just feel that we just need to, like you say, everybody needs a philosophy. For me, Jamaica needs an identity. Because when I play against, I don't know, Honduras, El Salvador, even America and Canada now, you're recognizing that they've got a philosophy and a style of play. You can see that they're going to, want to play that possession-based game of football. And I don't like being out-possessed by anybody. So that's why you've probably seen the Jamaica team possess the ball more and get more passes into our game, because that's how I want the team to play.
Coach, you continue to mention things, and it's a realization. It's a product of where you would have made your development from. The right experience you'd have gotten, the exposure, and as a young coach myself, someone who has aspiration to go beyond even my own expectations. It is something that, has great value to listen, to what you would have experienced as a coach, and what your knowledge is saying to us today is that, we are in reach, to what the world has to offer for our coaches here in Jamaica.
We're more than in reach. And what I want you to understand and believe that, because Belgium didn't start at number one. Even England who are up there now, they were struggling. Germany was struggling. Brazil was struggling. All these teams had to go back to square one and look at the way how they play football and get an identifiable way of playing football and work on that through the grassroots. So in 10 years' time, we should start to see the under-12s start to come through with a style of play that is recognizable to Jamaica, whatever that looks like. So, one of my principles is to get people out of their seats. I want my players to get the fans out of their seats, because that's how we play football. We need to, if you're 1v1 with a man, rock the man, play football, whatever it is, and really excite the crowd, because that's what Jamaicans want to see. So that's one of my principles that I ask the players to do. Now, that takes a long time, but the younger that you go with the under-12s and the under-11s and the under-10s, if you ask those players to do it, they're going to do it. So by the time they've been doing it for 10 years, it becomes normal. So you've got to have that, that conveyor belt really coming through. So we're looking at the under-17s and the under-20s, but really we're looking at the under-11s and the under-10s. because they're the ones who are going to really come through and be really consistent and be really world beaters, because they've been doing it for 10 years and they should be ready to go.
Interesting, coach. Coach, I was really, doing a reflection while you speak, on some valid points. During your time, playing for the Reggae Boyz, I know you would have had the opportunity to coach some brilliant prospects that would have really come through the ranks at the schoolboy level here and also the Premier League level. You've seen the likes of Ziminis and, Christopher Pearson, who we really recently had a chat with. What are some of the things that you saw from those players? And I'm sure there are other players you would have seen who deserve these opportunities.
There was many. I'm just sad that I didn't get to take more, because there was many in the group. And Jamaica is, like I say, Jamaica is one of the most resourceful places on the planet. Not only for music, not only for athletics, but for so many other things. We've got clever children, we've got footballers, we've got athletes, we've got so many different things. And I saw that when I camped, and that's one of the reasons. Have a look at the local talent that was here. I'm an advocate at developing local talent. I like to develop young players, and that's why I included Ziminis and Palmer in there. What I saw in them was the willingness to learn. I saw good basic core skills. Now, that's the most important thing that I saw in them. It wasn't the tricks, it wasn't the advanced core skills, it was the basic core skills. They were able to pass and receive the ball and contribute to a sophisticated style of play that I wanted them to play. So to play for me, you have to be able to pass and receive the ball to a high level. And the ball must go over every blade of grass. We want to keep the ball as much as we can. We want you to be able to get turned and play forward as much as you can, break lines, receive the ball in tight areas, distribute the ball. And those two were able to do it with ease. So I wanted to bring them into the men's setup, because the tempo just automatically goes higher. And I mean, even Bygraves and Daniel Green and Atkinson and Marshall, all these guys, when they went into the setup, they realised that the ball was travelling a lot faster than it would do normally. But it also helps them to think quicker, and I'm sure they loved it. I mean, I haven't listened to Christopher's his interview with you, but I'm sure he loved it, and he was just taking everything in because it was so fast. But I was not afraid to use that boy, or afraid to use Ziminis like you saw, because I believed that they could play.
Thank you, Coach. And for those persons who are currently joining us on the live, I am here having a chat with Coach Paul Hall, and a very informative, discussion, one that I, as a young coach, will take on for the rest of my life, to become, who I'm destined to be. And I'm sure young coaches who are currently joining, players who also participated in our World Cup campaign, I would have seen Andre Gray, Maria passing through as well. And so Coach, these characters of players that you would have, had the opportunity to work with over the last, few weeks ago, what can you tell us, about their character? Because it is important for young players here in Jamaica to have that feeling, that sense of knowing, what these players have to offer outside of just watching them on TV or going to the national stadium.
So you talk about Ziminis and Pearson.
The Mariap and the Andre Grays and those players who have that high experience.
Yeah, now these guys are elder statesmen, let's put it that way, around the team, but they're unbelievable mentors. And, when you're trying to transition a team and grow with a team, you have to have the elder statesmen around, telling them, things like Mariap has done a fantastic job with Richard King. I mean, as you can see, Richard King, as good as he is, he needs guidance. And he needs, when he steps into the international stage, he's good, but we want to stretch him to the point of where he's going to be great. And we can't do that by just coaching him alone. He needs somebody to play beside him, holding his hand. And then after a while, we can start to let go of his hand and let him flourish. Same with Andre Gray. For me, Andre Gray is probably the most one of the most committed players that we've got. And if I say to him, I want you in Jamaica tomorrow, I'm there. I'm there. You know, that for me is enough for me to say, right, yeah. Because he's like, I'm there. Whatever. I mean, I spoke to him today at work. We work at the same club, and you know, he's just like, I'm there. I'm there. And for me, that was the attitude that myself, Dion Burton, and Fitzroy Simpson had when we first come on the scene. You know, our club was fighting us, saying, we don't want you to go to Jamaica. We don't want you to do this. We were there. You couldn't. Our whole herd of horses couldn't stop us from coming to Jamaica to play. And he kind of encapsulates that in his attitude to wanting to play for Jamaica.
Hey, coach, I have a special guest, you know, on the live as well, and that's Coach Gary James. You guys met, you know, up in when we had the Gold Cup campaign, and he's just going to join us for a few.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
Coach Gary James, one of our members here at Football in 90, who follows the national team all over. My respect to Coach Gary James always. Coach, thank you for joining us up here at Football in 90.
Thanks. Good to be here. Hey, Coach Hall.
Yes, man, you good?
Good. Yes, I'm good.
Yeah, man, the traffic looks busy behind you, man.
Yeah, I'm actually going to the Inter Miami FC game, so I'm in the parking lot right now.
Okay, is Damien playing?
Looks that way, yeah. I saw the lineup. Looked like Damon is in the lineup, so
Okay.
he will playing against Speedy and Lamar and company. So
Wow. Let's be bragging right.
Yeah. Yep. Miami bragging rights.
Yeah, man.
Coach James, I'm sure you'll have some questions for the gaffer. You know, you would have joined us early, and you'd have heard some interesting, you know, events, you know, his experience and exposure, and I'm quite sure you are impressed just like myself. Any questions for the gaffer?
Of course. So, brought up a lot of good points so far. I wanted to kind of pick up on something you were saying about the commitment of players. Because I heard you in a couple interviews, and you just mentioned the word commitment just now.
Yeah.
Could you expand on that a little bit? I know Nations League is coming up, and you probably have to decide on what kind of team you're going to be using. So commitment of players is key, right? Especially when you're dealing with overseas players, especially the ones that are new. So what are your thoughts in terms of how you're going to put the squad together, and how you're going to be able to judge that commitment?
Well, I think you judge the commitment based on, you know, when you say, especially overseas players, it's any player, you know, and you can see somebody's commitment, you know, because sometimes you can have a player here, but they're not present. Does that make sense? Sometimes they're here, but they're not present, which means they can be here in body, but in mind they're not here. So I really do believe that it's about when you have a conversation with somebody and you look in their eyes, you can see whether they're committed or not, or sometimes from performances you can see whether they're committed. So there's a lot of things to think about, and a lot of things to consider when you're putting a squad together. But I feel that commitment is number one. And sometimes you can ask the question to some people, but sometimes you see it in the fact that you ask them to be somewhere, and I can't be there until so and so. That I can't be there until so and so. You know, I've had discussions with players about playing for Jamaica for the first time, who have probably represented England, and the first thing that they say to me is, "Oh, I'm keeping my options open." So for me, that's conversation over. You know, if I'm being brutally honest, for me, because it's either yes please, or you know, we're giving somebody an opportunity to play for a great team, and if we don't, if we can't get that commitment, then we can't expect to win anything. So you know, there's a lot of people to try to see if we can get through, but yeah, I just feel that commitment starts. That's the number one principle that we have to think about.
Yeah, and I think that's important. I heard an interview with Fitzroy the other day.
Mm.
I'm old enough to remember the days of Fitzroy Simpson and Paul Hall and Deion Burton.
Yeah.
So it's really, I think it's really key for us to get those committed players and be selective in the way that we approach things, because I've seen many different generations of players, and just like you said, you can look in their eyes, and if you're around the team, you can tell who is committed and who is not. So I think that's really important. I wanted to pick up on something else you also said. You were talking about
Yeah.
style of play and being a little bit more possession oriented, right? I also saw something in the first game that you coached. The first game you coached was actually the practice game, right, against Peru.
That's right.
And I thought we were much more aggressive without the football, pressing a little bit higher up the pitch. What are your thoughts on that in terms of how Jamaica plays and whether we should be generally more aggressive without the football?
I can only speak from experience as a player. I mean, like I said, you can learn things as you pick them up, but in your soul, you are a certain way, and you want to see the game being played in a certain way. And I like people to press the ball. You see any training session, the players are pressing like their life depends on it. Because I like to get the ball back. I like to play with the ball. So to play with the ball, you've got to be desperate about getting it back. So my idea of playing is just like anybody's idea of playing is, we want the football. Unless you, by design, you're a team that want to give the ball away to try and see if you can counter-attack high up the pitch, which is another way of doing it. But I just like the ball, and in those transitional moments, we actually train. So you lose it, get it back as quickly as you can, and be as organised. I don't think that's, I did that as a player. My team were very, very good at pressing. My Jamaica team, they were very, very, very good at pressing. I just try to instill those qualities. It's very difficult when you've got an hour with them, or you've only got 2 days with them to get that. But they've shown that. That some of the boys have actually shown them and shown those qualities. So it's something to work on.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because you're talking earlier about coming from club, and obviously you have 3 or 4 days to work with the players, and then you have a game on the weekend maybe, so you have a lot of time to instill whatever you want to do in terms of philosophy.
Yeah.
So obviously not easy as a national coach with the time that you're permitted.
Yeah. Especially as well when they're coming from.
Mhm.
Sorry, especially when they're coming from like England, and then they have to come on a 10-hour journey. The next day is
Right.
the rest day,
Right.
and then the next day is your training day, and then the day after that is the match day. So you've got to really be clear and really be inventive and creative with the way how you get the information into players.
Yeah.
And I feel that they've done well, because you've got to buy into the players have got to buy into it first and foremost. And that's probably the most difficult part of the job, is asking somebody to change the way they play. And
Right.
really believing it 100%. But we've done some good work with the players in that respect.
Good. You're talking a little bit about coaching the coaches in Jamaica and the ones that you're familiar with, the ones that you've been working with so far, Fuzzy and some of the others.
Yeah.
So coaching education we know is very important. When you get this job on a full-time, not the interim role term anymore, but the full-time head coach, how close do you think you're going to be to the coaching education side of it? How much do you know so far about what we're doing, overall in terms of coaching education, and what's going to be your kind of role there?
Okay, so I think what you could do is ask other coaches how I've integrated them so far. I think me blowing my own trumpet about what I've done, it's no recommendation. So if you ask
Right.
them, I think they'll tell you, how I've helped them in their coaching education, and also not just coaches. We've got to develop people who are performance analysis coaches,
Right.
Trainers, different people like physios, all the different areas around that get footballers onto the pitch. We've got to ask them to improve as well. I know that there's a big push for the B license coaches, people to be B license accredited, and they're pushing for the A license to come to Jamaica as well. So I do know that I would be a massive part of all of that.
Good.
In having in services, which is coaching kind of conferences where we get everybody in together and then we put sessions on. But that's all in the education side of things. So it's not just the job; it's a job to help others see things at close quarters, and that's the reason why I've got Coach Fuzzy Brown in looking at close quarters, because he can see the exercises and the sessions and the activities that we're doing, hopefully take them back. Sometimes you're just hearing the messages that we're saying to the players, the little things that we say to players, and that excellence only. So if somebody gives the ball away, they're held to account for that, because giving the ball away at international level is a massive thing, because you're running around after somebody now for 90 seconds when you've tried to take a chance that didn't need to be taken. We need to keep that ball and finish off with something positive. And those messages the coaches need to hear.
The Nations League draw, coach, Mexico and Suriname. How did you feel about the draw?
I think it's a draw that suits us. We know about Suriname. We know about them already. We've played them in the Gold Cup, so we know what they're about, and we know that they're very Dutch orientated. So it will be a football match, and then we know what Mexico bring us. I believe that we can progress, and we can look to try to achieve some really good things in the future, especially in that group. And I think we can look to be aggressive in that group if we get the people right, and we get enough practice into the players before the first game starts.
All right, good. So I'm going to jump off, coach, to go watch the game. But I wanted to ask one last question, maybe related to that, because a lot of our players that were developed in Jamaica now play in the USL. How familiar are you with it, and what are your thoughts on the USL overall as a league?
Sorry, repeat that for me, please.
Yeah, the USL, which is where Speedy plays and Lamar Walker plays. That's the second division of the US system, right? So a lot of our Jamaican bred players play there now. So what are your thoughts on the quality of the league? If you're familiar, how familiar are you with it?
It's a good league. I think it's getting better. Like you say, we've got a few players that's in that league. Peter Leversell, Devon, Lamar. Those guys are in that league, and I like to keep tabs on those players who are in that league. So it's really, really key. It's a good league. I mean, listen, you'd want your players playing of any country, because that's where the real competition is at. But these guys are in their development, and they're still, what we want them doing is playing matches. That's important, because getting 90 minutes into their legs is key, and really having them. I mean, that it showed itself in our last World Cup campaign that some players weren't able, especially around the Christmas period, when the break was on, they weren't able to get those 90 minutes in, and we had some ring rustiness when we restarted the campaign at the start of the year. So it's important that these players are kept playing and playing the very highest league that they can. If they could get to Europe or get into the top league in America, it would be so much better for those players and us as a national team.
Yeah, agreed. All right, Coach. Thanks for the time. Thanks for giving us a chance to pick your brain. I'll turn you over back to Coach Lambert.
No problem.
Take care.
Thank you very much, Coach James. Coach, it's always a pleasure to speak with a man with such great knowledge. Coach Gary James there, as you see, is continue to follow our players everywhere they go, whatever club or country. I'm sure like I said to him last evening, Coach James, we need to go, to the under 20, So let's see what's happening on our end. But Coach, it's been a pleasure to be speaking with you, and a man of great knowledge, But before I let you leave, this is a great question I want to ask, and it is a valid question towards, those who are watching, and especially to our players here in Jamaica, who want to make a transition overseas, which is normal for young players, watching television and seeing, the Damian Lowe, the Speedy, the Lamar Walkers, doing great things over there. What kind of motivation, you have for them, to make such a big step?
I think that, a lot of young players, I think what they should know is that they can play overseas. So it's about opportunity. So the ability is already there. I think, the players that they need to constantly be improving themselves. And what I like to see, if I was a scout, I'd be looking at players who have got a great attitude and who have got very, very good basic core skills, which means passing and receiving. And they can pass and receive the ball to a very, very high level. Whenever you watch football in Europe, you see that they're experts at passing the ball and receiving the ball. And those players who have probably left the island are all experts at passing and receiving the ball, as well as doing their other little bits that they become experts at. So it's already here. The world's waiting for Jamaican players, just like how it was when we qualified for the last World Cup. I think what we did when we did qualify was we allowed the Ricardo Fullers, the Bibby Gardners, the Jermaine Johnsons, all these young players. We allowed them to be scouted because we brought the attention to Jamaica, so that the team that we went into with your Pepe Goodisons and your Durant Brown, all these players, Ricardo Gardner, these players were already here. So there is the talent in Jamaica. It's just us now developing it and making it better and never accepting anything as being good enough. If you could win a competition, still not good enough. It's nowhere near good enough, because win a competition, yeah, you can celebrate it for the day, but tomorrow now you must get back on it and try to be world class in everything you do.
Thank you very much, Coach Paul Harley. Like I said, it's a pleasure to have you. It was a very informative discussion that we had on, our coaching education system here in Jamaica, ways to improve, for us to make that, immediate transition to go beyond our own expectations. Coach, like I said, it's always a pleasure, even if it's not on live. We have been, having some discussion as it go on. And I'm sure when you return to the island, we will be able to have another chat again.
Yes, sure, for sure.
All right, Coach, thank you very much.
Nice one. Take care, everybody.
There you have it, guys. That was Coach Paul Hall. Coach Hall, head coach of the Reggae Boyz senior national team, and Coach Hall would have done, his work there, and commendations. So you heard the man, it takes a high level of discipline and commitment to achieve what you want. And that is all we ask of the gaffer, to give up his best to give young players opportunity to do what they love. And that's what he did with the likes of Zimnees, Christopher Pearson. And we continue to support the Reggae Boyz as best as we can here at Football in 90. We look forward to the under 17s. We look forward to the under 20, because we will be there and we will continue to support them as best as we can. Big up to Andre Gray, Mariapa who joined earlier. We saw them watching. We saw, Corey Burke. We saw our players, and we continue to support them as best as we can. Remember to follow us here at Football in 90, because we'll definitely have the best interactions that you need, so you can take to learn and to become the best of yourself. Thank you very much, guys, and see you